And let's see what it does. And yeah, let's send her. Look what UPS just dropped off. Alright, so let's take a look and see what this VFD looks like. Big box or a small box. So I am using a TECO Westinghouse L510 frequency inverter. So this is just a VFD. I am going from single phase, I'm going to go from 240 single phase to 3-phase. So they give you this nice little cheat sheet. So we were looking at this, lines 1, 2, 3, these are the power in, and we only have these 2 lines available to us in that VFD. So I'm probably going to throw 120 here and another 120 there. This is ground. And then this goes to our 3-phase motor, which is going to be our head. So, okay. I like this switch. This is, you know, forward and then reverse. This is off. So I want to incorporate this switch with the VFD. I'm not too sure how I'm going to do that, but I think I can. Let me get a beer. So at one point it was wired for 208. When I went up north to the coal mines, this was wired 240 volt 3-phase. So you can see here at 200 volts, it pulls 5.2 amps. At 400 volts, it pulls 2.6 amps. So clearly it really doesn't care what voltage it gets, as long as it gets 3-phase. And it'll do 50 cycles or 60 cycles. That's cool. And this is a 1.5 horsepower motor. I thought this was a 2 horsepower motor, but it's 1.5. But the real thing I wanted to look at was the amps. And we're running at 240. We're going to do 240. So we're going to be closer to 5 amps. So I was trying to decide what gauge wire to use. And I'm just going to use 14 gauge wire because that covers me fine. I was thinking of doing heavier gauge all the way here, but there's really no need because I'm not pulling that much. So I just fastened this to the wall here. I just decided to put it at my head height so it's easier for me to look at and you know, really start wiring this thing up. So let's do it. So I'm going to crimp on some ferrules because I want to do this right and clean, and then I'll probably just put a separate connector here for this one. Yeah, let's do that. Now I know this isn't like an ideal thing. In a perfect world, this VFD would go in like an enclosure to protect it from dust and debris and stuff, but I don't have an enclosure yet, and I don't really know what I'm looking for. I wasn't too sure the size of the VFD, and I'm impatient. I want to use this thing, so that's why we're wiring it up this way right now. But once I figure out how this thing goes and operates, I'll order, or I'll even make an enclosure for this thing. So yeah. All right, our lines are in. You do the pull test, everything's holding good. Okay, power's on. And look at that. It's blinking with a 5 on it. So yeah, I have no clue what that means, but hey, at least it turns on. So let me unplug it, and then now I'm going to start figuring out what I'm going to do with my motor. Ooh, love that sound. I'm going to hit run, actually. Let's see what this thing does. Run. Oh shit, look! She's spinning. Okay, we got 60 hertz. And my little dial indicator is spinning like a son of a bitch. Okay. So, I want to know what's going to happen when I put this thing off. Alright, it doesn't fault out, so I'm going to go to reverse. Look at that, it's going in reverse. Shit. Alright. So she threw a code, and we kind of thought she was going to do that. So I'm digging into this manual more, and so this bar here, this whole bar is 24 volts DC. And looking, if I want to do, me trying to do what I want to do and use that switch as the contactor to go from forward to reverse, I have to, instead of doing it the old school way of just flipping an X and a Y on the 208 side, I'm going to change that to pretty much just communicate with this DC bar here. And yeah, who cares? So what I'm going to do is pull this line from the contactor off of the contactor. I'm going to connect it to the motor itself, which is what it wants, which is what it asked for, really. So I'm going to do that so that way voltage is going to the motor. But then I'm going to take the leads from the contactor, and according to the manual, so the communication line here, this is just like the continuous loop. So we're always going to show, this is going to be our 24 volt positive. And S1 is forward, so I'm just going to dedicate that this is my communication, this is my forward, and then S2 is reverse. So I'm going to use this as the reverse, and what that does is that just automatically flips one of the X and Y on the phases for the motor to go in reverse. I think, and I'll do that, and I think the VFD will like that communication path. Does that make sense? All right, so if I turn this on, okay, she starts turning on, so that's cool. Good. Very interesting. Now I got to figure out reverse. What I ended up doing is I went into these two parameters, which is 3-00 and 3-01. This one is S1, so this is my forward, and I set it to forward. And then I went to S2, and I set it for reverse up on here. So I am actually going to get out of here. And the other thing I did is I changed my speed, my come-up time to like 2 seconds, and my deacceleration to 3 seconds. So when I select this to on, she cranks right up. Go off, and it brakes automatically. I go to reverse. She reverses. I'm thrilled. All right, so I got my power feed hooked up. Got my digital readout, and I put a PBR in there, so I'm going to try to machine this PBR open. And let's see what it does. And, yeah, let's send her. All right. Well, it's a hell of a way to shotgun a beer. All right, so I inserted this 2-flute end mill onto here. I found my 0, and I am going to mill like 2 inches of this piece of iron. And I'm using my grandfather's book here. It's the Machinery's Handbook, 18th edition. So, and when I'm looking at here, all right, so material to be milled. So malleable iron and over an 1/8 inch. Let's do under an 1/8. You know, let's just cut a 1/16 off. See what it sounds like. She's milling it. Okay, 1/1000th off, and I'm actually going to move the Y out so I can square it off. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So at least it's squared off. And now let me make sure I bring that back to 0. And let's send her back this way. Yeah, we should bring her all the way back to 0. Then we can take a look at the finish here. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Well, you know what? I'm just going to bring it out because we have the table. And I mean, it feels really smooth. And ain't that something? Cool. We're machining.